Well, good evening. It's good to see all y'all. Y'all. You know, Texans have some pretty complicated conjunctions. You know, I do worship. Did you guys know that? I do the music. You didn't know that? Okay, well, yeah, I do the music, and I look for new songs. And man, this week I found some doozies. There's a lot of songs out there, worship songs out there that just aren't real good. It is not real good. One of the ones that I was listening to, it kind of, I mean, it had promise. It was a little bit weird, but it had promise. And it gets to the chorus, and it says, I'm no longer a slave. And I'm like, okay, this is good. We're getting into Romans. And then he says, of fear. And I'm like, oh, I thought, I mean, it's good, you know, what God's done and that and everything, but it misses the big point, the point that almost the entire book of Romans is about. We're no longer slaves to sin. You know, I feel like this generation of Christians have just kind of forgotten the glory of that. You know, I mean, it's good that God gives us comfort, but that's not the highlight. That's not the main thing. I mean, God heals a lot of people too. That's still not the main thing. I mean, that's cool and everything, but the main thing is we're no longer slaves to sin. And so, he started quoting Romans, and I was getting really excited, and then I was like, darn it. So last week, that's why I write a lot of my own songs. There's just a lot of bad theology and bad ideas in songs. Like, there's this one song that I really like, except that right in the middle of the chorus it says that God's love is reckless. And God's love isn't reckless in any way, shape, or form. He knows the beginning to the end. And then I was listening to the guy that wrote the song. His name's Corey Asbury or something like that. And he was explaining it. And wow, that guy believes some strange things. So I felt even less good about it after reading his explanation about it. I was like, okay, wow, that's bad. But anyways, so last week we started talking about what can I do, and the main highlight from last week was be willing. God's looking for people who are willing. And we looked at the idea that what can you do? Well, it's more about who you are than what you do. When I was a kid, it was all about, you know, all the things that you could do, the to-do list, how useful you could make yourself, earning your way to salvation, making everybody in awe of how you were the person who got the job done. It was just all about works. And whenever you're asking the question, what can I do for God's glory? You're missing it. It's about the heart, first off. So what can you do? Well, it's more about who you are than what you do. You know, we talked about the idea of what is excellence. Excellence is doing the best that you can do. It's not a competition between you and somebody else. Are you doing your best? See, sometimes we think that our best isn't very good because it's not like, oh, that person. You do your best. And here's the thing, though, and I added this onto the end of it, without complaining. And why do I bring that up? Because I've been in church for a long time and doing ministry for a long time. And complaining is one of those things. You do the same thing every single week, and it really starts to get down. You know what I mean? A good example of this is I make my dad's PowerPoints. So you know how there's like oftentimes verses missing, and that's because I'm the one who's doing it. Like I say, there will be people who do it better than you. But I do it, and I got in a rut there for a long time where every single Saturday morning when I was making it, I just complain. The whole hour that I was doing it, I just feel in a crappy mood. So I'd go home, and I'd be really super tired. Why? Because I spent the whole time while I was doing my job complaining. I didn't even realize I was doing it. So that's why I bring up that thing. Do the best that you can do. Maybe somebody else could make those PowerPoints better, but I do the best that I can with them. And I try not to complain anymore. It's something that, you know, really gets to be bad. What a lot of times what pastors do is they do something like this. I don't want any of you guys to gossip and complain, but I'm going to gossip and complain. You know what I mean? It's like, well, that's not really how it works. I mean, you kind of have to be what you want to make in others. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when you tell your kids, act like this, but then you're short-tempered and, you know, you're not real responsible. You don't clean up after yourself. But you want your kids to do all those things. You just don't want to do it yourself. You know what I mean? It kind of falls under that same umbrella. You know what I mean? You guys need to be perfect and sinless and never mess up. But I'm the pastor. I can mess up, you know. So we're going to continue talking about that. What can I do? I have gotten 47 second notices of my car's warranty expiring. I love Amy. She's a great robot. She has really helped me to know that. And I appreciate her calling me at all hours of the day and into the night. I just really appreciate, but I'm really concerned that she doesn't know how to count, because that's not a second notice. Okay, this is a second notice, okay? Hey, did you know that you have a car's warranty? I did not. It's expiring. Okay, thank you. Hey, remember yesterday when I was talking to you about your car's warranty? Yes, it's still expiring. That's a second notice, okay? Just so we're clear. Amy really needs to get her act together. Scammers, they try to get you to react before you have a chance to think. You know what I mean? And, that stupid call that they were doing about the car's warranty, they changed it up this year. Did you notice? Before it was just, this thing, but then they added a name. Her name's Amy now. See what I mean? And it's slightly different, and they slightly word it. Why? To try and, if you haven't heard it already, to try and, scam you. They want you to, mess up and give them something you're not supposed to. Like when somebody calls them, they say, hey, we're with Wells Fargo. We just need to verify some things with your account. Can I have your account number, please? Wells Fargo does not do that, guys. Wells Fargo does not do that. So, scammers try to get you to react before you have a chance to think. Before cell phones, if you're under the age of 20, there was a time when cell phones didn't exist. So before cell phones, a scammer called my mom saying that they had my dad. They had my dad, and he was, they had kidnapped him, or an old man kidnapped him, or whatever, and would only give him back if she gave him all of her money. And mom's freaking out because, there aren't cell phones. So she's trying to page dad. She pages him 100 times, and she's freaking out. She's like, these people, they're going to kill dad. They're going to kill, or Randy, because she doesn't call him dad. That would be weird. They're going to kill Randy. Well, so then finally dad, after getting like the 15th pager on his, you remember pagers? They're these little useless devices that beep anytime. Yeah, okay, all right. If you don't know what a pager is, use Google. I mean, come on. So he called, and he's like, well, what's up? What's the deal? And she's like, oh, are you safe? And he's like, yes, I'm fine. I'm working. What's up? Scammers try to get you to react before you have a chance to think. And, or here's another good example. The encyclopedia salesman who got my parents to buy a whole set, which I loved. I loved that encyclopedia set. Or how about the Kirby guy who's like, just for today, I'm going to give you this vacuum for $1,200, just today. And that's just because it's late and I want to sell this model. Or what about the car salesman? Ever been to a car lot? Man, they're relentless. And there are, exactly, trying to get you to rush. If you really want to do something and the car salesman's really sold you on it, or any other salesman, do this. I'll think about it. And then walk away. Give yourself this. If I still want it in 2 weeks, I'll go get it. 2 weeks. Then go home and see if you really need it. You might not even really need it. So there are a lot of people in the world who want to take advantage of you. If you don't know that, you're not very old. There's just a lot of people who really want to take advantage of you. And they want their problems to be your fault. Now, here's the part where it comes down to you. It's very easy to get jaded, scarred, bleak, pessimistic, whatever you want to say. I will never do that again. And here's the problem is when it starts transferring into your idea with church and ministry, because you get into a situation, people take advantage of you, and they will in the church too, okay? I hate to rip off that Band-Aid. I know that we're all supposed to be perfect here. We're not. Surprise! It's kind of like a Jack in the Box. Galatians 6:9 says this. It says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we don't give up. So that kind of goes against what we were just talking about just getting jaded, right? And now Ecclesiastes 11:1-2, ship your grain across the sea. After many days you may receive a return. Okay, what that means is make a lot of investments. As this applies to ministry, try a bunch of different things. Pastor Chuck and I, we've tried a lot of things, and a lot of them have been complete failures. But we've tried a lot of things, and some of them have worked. Ship your grain across the sea. After many days you may receive a return. Who knows? Invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8. You do not know what disaster may come upon the land. People who, let's just say that the stimulus checks have kind of rocked some of people's financial investments. And a little scary time to be a business owner. And we're not laughing about that yet? Okay, sorry. Sorry. Not yet. Bitter, table of one, bitter. So what do you do when you try and help somebody and you try and help people and it doesn't work out? They screwed you over, you got nothing to show for it. What do? Well, if you're listening to the world, they'll say, well, here's the thing, though. You try again. And that's pretty much the entire thing that we're going to be talking about tonight. Mother Teresa had this written on the door of her orphanage. Not the door, the wall of her orphanage. Some people think that she wrote it. That's not actually a thing. It was just something that she had written down. And she quoted somebody else, but she slightly changed the wording. This is not the entire thing, but this is the part that I want to read for tonight. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyways. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. And I think that that is just a good way of kind of summarizing what we're going to be looking at. And here's the thing that people don't get. You're going to face a lot of failure and betrayal. Failure on your part, betrayal and abandonment on people, how they treat you. And here's the thing. We kind of brush this under the rug and say something like this. Well, just pray and you'll get over it. Well, I mean, yes, you should be praying, but it sometimes gets a little bit more complicated than that. And for some reason, every failure and every betrayal and every abandonment and every time that somebody attacks you, it will become yet another weight and burden. And even when good things happen, the good won't outweigh the bad. You'll still be carrying around the baggage of the bad, all the while the good things are happening. And eventually, as the weight of the bad things gets more and more, because more and more bad things keep happening, you eventually can't even see the good things anymore. It's a very, very confusing thing, especially if for people who do things like pastoring or something like that. It gets to be, why don't I enjoy this anymore? And then it starts killing your optimism. And you start thinking, how did I get here? Well, so what do you do when you get to that kind of a place? Well, I'll give you a few very quick pointers, and then we're going to get back to the main idea of the sermon. This is just a little detour. I know they tell you not to do that, but I feel like it's kind of necessary to do this. So the first thing that you can do is take breaks. Take breaks every week. In the law, God gave the people of Israel something called the Sabbath, which was for their benefit. See, they just came out of a situation. They just came out of a long-term bad relationship. It was complicated, very complicated. Anyways, and so they had these overlords who told them, this is how you arrange every moment of your life. They'd never had to make up their own decisions before. So here they are, free from slavery, something that they hadn't known in generations, and they're like, I don't know what to do with this. And so God's like, okay, hold up. Let me just kind of clue you in here. You need to have a day off, okay? This is called the Sabbath. It's very holy. And the thing about God is it's hard to understand God sometimes. I mean, in the law, for instance, there's some dude that got stoned for picking up sticks on the Sabbath, but then there's false prophets who he didn't bring to punishment for years and years and years. And you can't say, sometimes it seems like the wicked people even prosper. And you really can't say, I can know the mind of God by how God brings punishment, because he doesn't bring punishment in a by-the-line kind of way, you know what I mean? Sometimes he should bring punishment. He gives mercy instead. Sometimes, he just, for whatever reason, he just, I'm not having that, and, he acts. I don't know exactly why he does that, but, good thing he doesn't really have to answer to me, huh? So first off, take breaks. Have a day every single week that you take a break. Don't overwork every day. What I used to do is I used to work 12, 13 hours a day, 7 days a week. That was a bad idea. That's not how people were meant to live. And so not just take a day off, but also don't overwork every day. And another little quick idea here, don't wait too long to finish a task. If you keep moving something to do till tomorrow, you will never feel accomplished about anything, and it will be a constant irritant. And you will lose momentum, and you'll stop doing other things too because of that one thing that you haven't done. Organize your schedule, hit what you can every day, but there needs to be a point where you say, I'm not pushing this off any longer. I'm taking care of this today now. See what I mean? And I'm not saying work 15 hours a day. That's not what I'm saying. But you need to finish the task that you start. And as you start finishing things, instead of just having a to-do list, you're going to feel a lot better about the situation. You're going to have a better outlook. Don't stay busy. Sometimes we just try to stay busy 24/7, you know. After work, I've got this, and after this, I got this, and after this, okay, chill out, man. Just calm down. Unless you're doing cocaine, that's really not going to work. So don't stay so busy all the time. And then here's another little quick thing here. Don't do it too fast. Take the time to do it right. Sometimes people try to do a job so quickly that they start doing a shoddy job. You know what I mean? Take the time to do it right. You know, just slow down for 5 seconds. Just stop and look at what you're doing. You don't know how many times I've seen people try to build something and they try to go too fast and they stop halfway with, and they, now what did I do here? And it takes them 30 minutes to figure out what the heck they did wrong, and then they have to figure out how to fix it. You know, take the time to do it right. When you know that there's a difficult day or a difficult time that's coming up, take time before and after that difficult time to get ready for it. How do you get ready for it? Well, I'll tell you some ways that I do it. I go for a bike ride, and I clear my head. Getting the exercise helps, but then also I pray while I'm on my bike ride. And it's really hard for people to interrupt me because I'm biking 20 miles an hour. If you can talk to me, you're a really fast talker. Really fast talker. I was coming down from Ruidoso, and I hit 42 miles an hour on my bike, and then my foot slipped off the pedal. Oh man, that was scary. So I got clipped-in pedals now. Now my shoe snaps onto the bike. It doesn't fall off anymore. I'm like, oh, thank you, Jesus. I'm not doing that anymore. So anyways, that's another thing I do is take time before the battle to pray and read your Bible. But then, when you've had a great exertion, like for instance, I'm a pastor, so after Sunday night, take a breath, get some water, read some of the Bible, and pray. You've spent a lot of spiritual energy. You need to get back into the Word, get back and focusing on God, because what's going to happen is if you go from emotional exhaustion to emotional exhaustion without taking time to read the Bible or pray, you're going to get too drained. It's not going to work. So prepare for difficult times, and then after the difficult time, refocus. Have set times and places in your life for prayer and reading the Bible. At this time, this is what I do. It doesn't have to be in the morning. It doesn't have to be in the evening. I really don't care what you do as long as you're reading the Bible every day. Eat healthier and exercise. You know, some people, they think, I'm going to be healthy, so I'm going to exercise, but then they eat garbage. Did you know that it's a well-known fact that if you want to be healthier, the first place to start is with what you eat, not with your exercise? Did you know that? Your exercise cannot outdo a bad eating style. You know, I hear a lot of people talk about the natural remedies and stuff, and that's great. Natural is always, in my opinion, natural is always the best. But the problem is that people want to eat McDonald's every day, and then when they get sick, they want to be all like, I'm going to go the natural remedy because I don't want to go to the doctor. And it's like, maybe you should stop eating McDonald's every day. Anyways, I guess that's a conversation for another day. Ooh, goodness. And then one more. Where is this? Oh, don't just soak nonsense all the time with news and drama and on family drama and all that. There has to be a point when you just limit the intake for a little bit. I'm not saying you have to be ignorant to what's going on in the world. I'm just saying maybe limit. So I was reading a book called Gordon MacDonald. It's called Renewing Your Spiritual Passion, E-I-E-I-O. And he mentions 5 people you're going to have in your life. And I thought I would pass that down. You need to limit your involvement with each of these people, okay? The first 3 are all going to make you feel real good. And if you just do nothing but spend time with these people, you're not going to grow. It's like when you have a pastor who spends all his time reading books in his office and he doesn't talk to people. The knowledge doesn't mean anything without experience. It needs to be tempered. You know what I mean? It's like steel. You know what I mean? It really needs to be beaten. Anyways, so there's these 5 groups. The first group is called the mentor. This is someone who trains or guides you. Is someone who pours into your life. A good example of this would be that as pastors here have these Zoom calls. That if you're older and you don't know what that is, it's a video chat that you do on your computer screen where people can see you and you talk to them and they, if you're, if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. We're almost through the pandemic. If you've gotten this far without Zoom, you probably don't need it by now. But anyways, we were talking to our mentor, one of our mentors, and he said, right as he got on the call, he said, "Sorry, I'm a little bit late. I just got off of my coaching call." See, our mentor was getting done being mentored so that he could go and mentor us. See how that works? We get to this idea that I'm so spiritual and strong, I don't need a mentor. I don't need anybody pouring into me. I know everything. And okay, well, that's an idea. So that's the first person. Don't surround yourself with just mentors, though, because once again, you need to be doing stuff too. The second group, these are people who are teammates. They work alongside of you. If you are, the children's pastor and you have like a co-children's pastor, that would be, a teammate, somebody who works alongside of you, someone who helps you get the job done. I, for instance, on the worship team have Jimmy and Lauren. They would be my teammates, right? And so then the third person is called that's the one that you mentor. So I guess it would be a student. It would be someone that you mentor and teach, not like a congregation, but like a one-on-one experience. Someone that you are taking the time to teach them how to grow. Actually, this is a proven way. If you want to know how to get teenage boys to get back into church, they don't have father figures. You should read some of the statistics. They're a little bit frightful. And, one big way of doing that would be if the older men of the church, the senior people, people over 45, really, I guess, would be a good starting point. Really, anyone over 45. If those men would start spending time with those teenage boys, you would see a drastic increase. And I know this because I actually did a study on it at a church, and it worked. And they had a huge exponential growth. That's how growth happens. Every Timothy needs a Paul. If you don't know what I'm talking about, read your Bible. So these three groups, these people are good. They will help you feel better, that kind of stuff. But then there's always the people who don't necessarily make you feel better. The fourth group, the crowds. They're nice, but they're not really involved. They're like when you pour the cereal in within the milk and you eat all the marshmallows out, and you still have the cereal that kind of just doesn't really taste like anything, but now it's soaked up all the milk and it just kind of tastes like snot. That's group 4. They're the crowds. They're the milk suckers. They're the stuff that just kind of sits in the bowl. They don't really drain you. They don't really pour into you. They're just kind of there. They don't really care if you succeed, but they don't really care if you fail either. You know what I mean? Before the pandemic, there was a large majority of people who called themselves Christians who would sit in the chairs, and they would just be number 4, the crowds. They weren't necessarily involved with the church. They didn't really want to see people saved. They didn't want to not see people saved, but they just weren't really involved in it. You know what I mean? They're just crowds. Now, the problem with being in the crowd is eventually you make a move forward or backwards. Most of these other groups, you can stay there for a long time. Crowds, not so much. Eventually, you get sorted. Which brings us to the last group, the drainers, the people who really just, the draining people. Now, there's a lot of different people that fit in this category. Gripers, people who are just, they just gripe about things. Those who don't respect your time. I was reading a book, and this pastor was saying that this person called him in the middle of the night. He's like, What's this? And he's like, I think me and my husband are getting a divorce. And he said, oh, okay, well, how long have you, oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm getting my stories confused. It was right before the Sunday morning service, and he was about to, start the service and everything. He said, well, I think my husband and I I'm getting confused again. There's 3 different stories that I'm thinking of. Okay, this time I'm positive of it, though, guys. Don't worry about it, okay? On Saturday, he was finishing his sermon. This is the story I wanted to tell you. On Saturday, he was finishing his sermon. When you read so many books, sometimes you get so many stories, you confuse them. Don't worry, I figured out which story I'm telling now. Now, if the story would just change the facts to get by what I'm saying. No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. Okay, so he was working on his sermon on a Saturday. That was when he did it. And this chick said, hey, me and my husband are going to get a divorce. And he said, okay, well, how long have you felt like this? And she said, oh, about 7 or 8 months. And he said, okay, why are you wanting to talk about it right now? And she's like, oh, I just thought it was a good time. He's like, can we meet on Monday instead? And she said, yeah, that'd be fine. People who don't respect your time. Here's another example. There was this church who started up it's like a kind of like a halfway house, a drug rehabilitation program. And obviously, you get people who are substance abusers and don't have healthy relationships. Well, they started calling the leaders of that, that group, the rehabilitation project, started calling the leaders at all hours of the night because they don't know boundaries. And well, it was one of those things, people who unintentional drainers. Now, I'm not saying you can avoid these people. Some people tell you, cut all the drainers out of your life. That's not ministry. The drainers are a large part of ministry. If you read the Gospels, Jesus spent a lot of times with the crowds and the drainers. Okay? He spent time with the mentor, that would be the Father. He spent time with the teammates, that would oftentimes be the disciples. And he also spent time mentoring his disciples. So, okay, all right, he spent time with those other people, but a lot of the time he was spending time with the drainers and the crowds. And so you can't really cut these people out. What I'm saying is you do need to limit who you're spending your time with. Because if you're doing nothing but spending time with people who drain you, you're not going to have anything to give to people who actually do need you. So it's like this. If I work too hard and then come home and my children need me, I don't have any energy to give them. Kind of like that. So these people are people who do a lot of griping, those who don't respect your time. They're critics and complainers, right? Everything you do is wrong. They have an opinion on everything. The unsatisfied, they think, oh, if I can get this person to change, then I'll be happy. And so they've decided that the pastor's the person that they need to change. And I'm just like, how about Jimmy? Go tell Jimmy what he needs to change. I got some stuff to do over here. The rebellious, these are people who can't get under authority. They don't really mind the idea of authority so long as they're the ones who are in it. They're just perpetually rebellious, overly needy. They don't really know how to resolve conflicts, how to resolve their problems. They're always causing a problem. There's always some tragedy. And here's the thing about this, okay? You can't avoid these people. There will always be some great tragedy. All that I'm saying is that you need to take breaks and manage your time. If us pastors never spent time with mentors, we would lose sight of our vision. If we never spent time with teammates, we would never get anything done. If we never spent time mentoring people, there would not be a church of tomorrow. It wouldn't exist because we need to train up leaders, right? Which requires patience and training. If we only spent time with the crowds, we would have nothing to show for all of our work. Did you get that? If we only spent time with the crowds, oh, but they need me, but they're not ready to take that step. Or if we only spent time with the drainers, eventually we start getting a real bleak outlook. Nothing I do matters. Well, maybe you shouldn't spend time with only people who drain you. So with that being said, I'll get to that in just a second. Let me just say a few other things. Have an inner circle of people to help you identify problem areas and call you on your bull crap. Because what people do, this is something we all do. I'm not picking out anybody. This is something we all do. We surround ourselves with people who think just like us and validate us. So that way I don't have to change, and I don't have to face the uncomfortable ickiness of being wrong. We don't like to be wrong. That's something that it just doesn't fit us right. We want people to validate our attitudes, validate our bad behaviors. That's the kind of people that we surround ourselves with, and everybody does it. So if you think that you don't do it, you're wrong. You do it. I mean, I said do. Everybody does it. So that's why you need an inner circle of people who will call you out on it. Okay? Be careful about cutting toxic, and this is what I wanted to say just a minute ago. Be very careful about cutting toxic people from your life. You hear people talk about this. You need to get rid of the toxic people in your life. Well, in a way, I guess. But here's the thing. When you start divorcing, and I'm not talking about marriage, when you start divorcing people from your life, I'm not talking about marriage, I'm talking about relationships. When you start divorcing people from your life, bitterness gets greater and greater, and you have to divorce more and more people. Because the more people you cut off because they're toxic, the more you find toxicness in everybody. And then eventually you go in this place of just not being happy, and then you become a toxic person. See what I mean? Does that kind of make sense? It's something that I see repeated over and over again, and here's the temptation, okay, the bottom line and all that. The temptation becomes that everyone who rubs me the wrong way gets the axe. So here's something I want to get by, okay? What technically is a toxic person? Let's say you're doing something wrong. You are Doing drugs. Here's a good example. You're doing drugs, and somebody says, hey, stop doing drugs. You're a toxic person. You should just love me for who I am. I didn't say I didn't love you. I said you should stop doing drugs. You see what I'm saying? So that person's a toxic person because they're not loving me for who I am. Well, does loving you for who you are mean that that you should never ever grow or learn and I should have to put up with your bullcrap all the time? My true friends will tell me things, you know what I mean? And don't try to weasel into this position. I already have my inner circle picked. If these group of 5 or 6 people, if they say something, they know me. And I know that they're right. But if somebody who doesn't know me brings an accusation against me, oh, you're this and this, I try and listen just to kind of glean something good from that. Like, when you poop and there's still like an undigested nut in the poop, I still try to glean some of the good from all that bad. But let me tell you, if somebody doesn't know you and they're telling you all your problems and all your faults, chances are they're just wrong. Have an inner circle that you can actually talk to. And that's why it becomes necessary. You will not find healing with 2 specific things that I want to mention, okay? You will never find healing with people who validate your bad attitude. That's the first thing. That will never bring you healing. It will make you feel good in the moment, but when those people are gone, you'll feel awfully lonely. You will feel completely helpless, like you'll never change, like you never can change. You'll feel like there's nothing but failure, and in your heart you'll know that you don't want to live like this, but then you won't have the power to do anything about it, because all that you've ever done is surround yourself with people who say, yes, it's not your fault. You keep doing the wrong thing because, hey, you don't have to change. That's not a healthy way. We should all be growing. We should all be changing. What Christians do is we have this little paradox, right? There's like God accepts us where we are, so that means I don't have to grow. Or here's another good one. We're mistreated, so because somebody mistreated me, that gives me the right to act wrong. Well, I went to a church once, and somebody betrayed me. So that means it's okay for me to just hate everybody in the church. That'll get back at that person. Just a good example of what I'm talking about. You will not find healing with people who value your... Now, here's the second thing. Now, this is something that young people are really struggling with right now. You will never find healing in isolation. If you are living by yourself, locked away in your house, I know the whole COVID safe thing, I get that, whatever. But what I'm saying is there has to be a point, though, where you still do connect with people, okay? That is very much so. They actually did a study, I've mentioned this a couple times, and they found that just physical touch helps the way the blood flows in your system. Just a physical touch. How crazy is that, right? People were made for encountering other people. So, people in communities will live longer than people in isolation. But with wise people who you can be real with. If you want to heal, you need to find wise people in your life who you can be real with and who will be real with you. So the second thing that you can do, you must have guessed it by now, be generous. Be generous. Now, what does it mean to be generous? Do what you can with what you have. Generosity is doing what you can with what you have. Sometimes there's somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of money, and you say, be generous, and their mind goes to money, usually because they're not good with money. We tend to over-focus on the thing we're not good at, right? So they go straight to money. Oh, well, I don't have any money to give. Okay, but what do you have? And what can you do with what you have? See what I mean? So now let's go with 2 specific things that you can be generous with. Money. Now here's the thing. When I grew up in the church, it was all about money. You could be the nastiest person in the world. You could gossip and complain and cause a coup in the church. It didn't matter so long as you gave your tithes. That's not a healthy idea. There were also a lot of televangelists who made the whole thing about, hey, you need to pay tithes so that God can release the spirit flow from heaven to you and your bank account will overfloweth. Okay, well, that's an idea. Anyways, now in the real world, you should be generous with your money. Here's the thing. If you give tithes or offerings, or if you give financially, if you don't know what tithes and offerings are, don't worry about it. If you give financially to a church, that is worship to God. You give your money out of worship to God. You understand that? I give money to God, but you're the pastor, yes. Because anybody who is who is in authority has to be under authority. There is no such thing as a position that you have where you're not under authority. That doesn't exist. Man, if that did exist, I think I would go find it. Everybody does this. Everybody does this. I want to be self-employed so I don't have a boss. But then you have 15 bosses. You didn't see that one coming, did you? Instead of just dealing with old Jerry or whoever the manager's name is, now you've got Jerry and Jack and John and Jill and all these other people, and they're all telling you how to do your job. Oh, you only thought being self-employed was better. But anyways, if you give your money, that is worship to God. Giving money to in a Christian setting is not an insurance policy. See, I gave to tithes. That means that God has to keep bad things from happening to me. Okay, giving money to God is not an insurance policy. It's not. It's also not manipulating God. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that if you give to God, that you're going to get home and log into your bank account and you're going to have like tens of thousands of dollars. That's not going to happen. In fact, I'm just going to rip off that Benny. That's not going to happen. That's not the way that the world works. But I will say this, that if you learn to give your money, you will be so much happier. Oh my gosh, you'll be so much happier. You will be more content, and God will guide you in different ways than He would have. I don't know what it is about releasing your money when you just get your hand off your check, off your money. You get the goo on it. When you get it off, you just have an easier time with things in life. And it's just a simple idea here that if many people pull their resources together, if they pull it, they can always do more than the few who don't. You, by your lonesome, try to reach Tularosa. Now, us together try and reach Tularosa. You can do more together if you pool your resources. The young adult group is full of a whole bunch of awkward people like me, people who really don't want to go outside, people who are afraid of the sun, and all of us together. But I'll tell you what, all of us together have done many things that we never would have been able to do apart. We cleaned the park a couple times. We, raised money for stuff. We made Christmas boxes for kids. We gave out socks in the parking lot. I mean, we did a whole bunch of things that we couldn't have done by ourselves. But when we all joined together, awkward young people that we are, we did something great. See what I mean? So oftentimes it's not about, the one person who gives the billions of dollars. It's about the one poor person who gave 2 pennies. You know what I mean? And that's really what it comes down to is the idea of what's in your heart. Using your money only on yourself, it'll never satisfy you. And no matter how much money you get, it will never be enough. You always need a little bit more to be happy. And so the second thing that you can be generous with is your time. And I know that there are other things. I'm just limiting here. And I will say this, that there are very few people as tired in the world as those who help others. When you're involved in charities and churches and those kinds of things, it drains you. It wears you out, man. I tell you what, here's the thing. You got to pace yourself, okay? I was watching this commercial, and this woman was going to all these different, activist things one after another, and she was getting all hurt, and she kept going to them one after another. And the thing is, you got to pace yourself. Do you notice how we don't have one person running all the ministries in the church? You know what I mean? We have one person doing this, one person doing this. And everybody's under the pastor. That's fine. But the pastor isn't doing all those things, right? We have other people. Did you notice how Dad's not doing the worship team? Not only because he can't sing. It's a joke, guys. It's okay. We're all laughing here. It's okay. It's all right. But also because he doesn't have time. Can you imagine how hard it would be to have to do everything yourself? It just doesn't make sense. So Matthew 25, I think, is a good place to kind of wrap up a lot of these ideas here. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I was a homeless beggar, and you did nothing more than throw money at me." No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. Golly. But seriously, though, sometimes we try and just feel better, ease our conscience by throwing money over at a homeless person. Okay, I've done my good deed, now leave me alone. That's the wrong idea. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you some? When did we do this? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you?" I don't remember doing any of this. When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And so that brings us to a couple of questions before we wrap things up. First off, what's your motive in doing something? Are you doing something to honor God or yourself? Now, this is a very settled place to be. There's been a lot of times in my life that I thought, I'm doing this for God. And then as I kind of stopped and thought, I realized I really wasn't doing it for God. I've been in ministry over 16 years. That's a long freaking time. And I can tell you that a good majority of that, I was in it for the wrong reasons. And you really don't realize that you're in it for the wrong reasons until it starts to get hard to do it. When it's easy to do something, the motives of your heart are kind of hidden. But when hard times come, the rubber really meets the road. Do you do it so that people think better of you or so that God gets the praise? What happens when you are overlooked? That will tell you where your heart is. What happens when those you love and serve the most, you spend a lot of time, treat you the worst? Do you keep doing the right thing and do you keep going? When your ministry isn't fun anymore, do you still do it? See, that shows you where your heart was really at the whole time. Sometimes we want to do things because we think it'll sound fun or whatever, and then it gets hard, and it's just, man, it's hard. And that will really show you your motives. So sometimes somewhere in here we say something along the lines of this: I can't give anything. I have nothing to give. Everyone can give something. And I'm not just talking about money here, but I will say this. If laziness has gotten a hold in your life, there is one very clear way to address it. It's the only way that I know how to. Learn to work and stop spending money. That's the only way I know of facing laziness. Learn how to work and learn how to stop spending money. Oftentimes we don't have money because we can't stop spending it. So we spend all our money on pleasure and then say, I don't have any money for rent. Well, maybe it's because you need to learn how to manage it. But it's not all about the money. It's about the heart. You know, I will say this. We've had a lot of different problem people that were real faithful to the church. They gave tithes faithfully. Caused a lot of problems, too. It's not all about the money. And then, now this is almost a 100% phenomenon. Then they stopped giving completely when they crossed the threshold of either being bitter or growing. You always reach a point when you have to either change or let the situation change. Let me say that differently. When you either change or you let the situation... I don't know how to say this. You are either willing to allow yourself to be changed in the situation or you double up and become harder and more firm and bitter than you were before. It happens to every single one of us. So if you've reached that place and you feel like you didn't handle it correctly, don't worry. You'll get another chance. Really, you will. Life is full of opportunities. And if you've done it, if you've gotten to that point and you've done well on it, don't think that you've passed and that's the end of the matter. It will come back again, and you'll have these little irritating things that keep coming by. Okay, here's a good example. I had the thorn in the flesh, this woman who was my girlfriend's mom. And man, oh man, was she a pill. Well, so then she left the church in a huff because, she was always offended about something. It just didn't take long. She just found things to be offended about. Another woman just like her came. And then I ended up, going off to college. There was people like that at college. And so then I got out of college, and I was like, okay, well, let's get on with my life. And adults were like that. And so then I became a pastor, and old people were like that, too. I was like, no! When do people outgrow this place? And I don't know. Maybe never. Maybe never. So it's not all about the money. It's like there's another kind of crossroads that people come to. And I got this from a YouTuber. His name's Mike Winger. He's a pastor. And he said that people will oftentimes, the breaking point in Christianity will oftentimes come to either heaven is real. Either hell is real and how we act matters, or sin isn't a big deal. I don't know why there's a big dividing line there, but oftentimes people who don't want to say that sin is real bad, they'll just say, well, hell isn't even real. It's not a real place. say maybe because they don't want to give up their sin or whatever. And I think that that's accurate. Everybody always has that place where they have to grow or change. Change or go back is what I mean. So let's kind of wrap some things up here. Don't be surprised when people mistreat you. Jesus even promised it would happen. In fact, Paul makes the comment that to be aligned with Christ is to have problems. He says this in the book of Romans, that when you follow Christ, you are signing up for problems. You will have struggles by following Jesus. I don't know where these televangelists get this. It's like, do you even read the Bible? Don't be surprised when people mistreat you. But here's the thing. Don't be generous so people will like you or so that you can get something back from them or so that you can get ahead or use people. Be generous because there's only one God. That's why you should be generous. And a lot of times we get to this place in life where we do something like this, okay? I don't do that. I'm just a good person. But then we do this. I did what was right. I treated them right, and this is how they repay me. So you're doing it to get something back. See, if you're being generous because of God, then it doesn't matter how other people treat you or mistreat you. It doesn't matter what irritating situations come by. You're not doing it for them. You're doing it for God. And everything that you're doing, even the really frustrating things, you can say, it's for God. And if God is well pleased with your sacrifice, well, then just hang in there, little trooper. If you have a death grip on your life and on your money and on your resources and on your time, you will never bring people to God or build bridges in Tularosa. God, what can I do? Be generous. Be generous. Sometimes we just have such a death grip. I don't want to give up any of my time, any of my things, any of my money. It's mine, mine, mine. Well, how do you think that God's going to reach Tularosa if it's not with your time, your resources, your money? Because remember, who's the one who gave you those things? And did he give you those things that you could roll around in them and say, they're mine? I can tell you this from experience, things will never satisfy. So it comes down to basically the Spock's genius moment that I think we all need to ask ourselves. Do the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or not? Either it's all about you or it's not all about you. It can't be both.